everyone. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Kelly.
My name is Doug.
And we are continuing in our season of stories about grief. And today's stories have to do with cancer, 2 different cancer journeys. And I want to say up front, these 2 journeys specifically are very close to my heart as they include some of my best friends, and one of them actually being my roommate. So, Doug, you've been in ministry for many years, and you've walked with people. So what is something we should keep in mind today as we're listening to these stories?
Yeah, I think that as people listen or watch, every one of these stories is unique, and they're not meant to be the same, but we can learn some common lessons as people go through suffering and as they call out to God, as they find community. So I think in these stories, people will find a lot of hope and even wisdom for the journey. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, it's a good one. So enjoy. Today we are continuing in our conversations around grief, but specifically today we are talking to 3 guests who are actually friends of mine, very close friends of mine, that have journeyed through cancer in very, very personal ways. And so you're going to hear about their different journeys, but Doug, I'll throw it to you to introduce our special guests.
Yeah, so Drew and Allysar and Jessica, we're so glad you're here. So looking forward to the conversation because I know this is going to encourage a lot of people deeply, because either people have experienced cancer or they have friends or family who have gone through cancer. And so this impacts our whole world. So Drew, Allysar, tell us your story.
Our daughter was sick for about 9 months. And we had no answers. She was having diarrhea every single day, multiple times a day, losing tons of rapid weight. And right before her 2nd birthday, we found ourselves in the emergency room. And that hospital stay ended up being the beginning of a 6-month journey. And we found out through that time that she was diagnosed with cancer, a neuroblastoma, a really rare and aggressive childhood cancer that kind of forms in the stomach.
And I don't know if you mentioned she was 2 at the time?
Right before she turned 2.
Right before she turned 2, yeah. And then not long after, Jessica, you have entered into your own journey. So tell us about your story.
Yeah. So in 2020, I felt a lump on my breast and kind of thought nothing of it for a while. I've had cysts before, and went and got it checked out, and then turned out it was an invasive ductal carcinoma. And I was scheduled to start chemo, do all the works, radiation, surgery. And then after they had done my full body scan, it had spread to my lymph nodes and liver. So I was diagnosed stage 4, which at the time I didn't know was bad, but it's incurable cancer. So that was kind of my journey.
And as you're, married and raising kids and living life, and as you're serving God and building up the community and just giving your lives away in so many ways, and all part of the same small group, how do you process this moment of shock of it's cancer? Like, how did you guys process it as husband and wife for your daughter? And then, how did you process it, in your life, knowing again, you're all part of the same group?
Man, I remember we were waiting on the test to get back. I remember sitting in the room, and Allysar went home to, I think, be with we had a baby. It was the middle child. It was 𝘾𝙃. And I remember she wasn't here, and the doctor just rolled in kind of unexpectedly. And she was like, yeah, this is cancer. And I think it was completely shocking. I think I just moved into a new role at work. It was months fresh. We just had another son, another kid, and I just was completely kind of what is happening? You kind of felt numb. I was absolutely terrified. I was really terrified when I heard that news. I just cried. I just cried.
Yeah, Drew calls me, and I'm on 75, wanting to be home and spend the weekend with 9 months. I think he was 9 months at the time. And it's just one of those out of body, what you feel like is a movie experience. Somebody is talking to you, but you're this is not real. And I remember one of the child life specialists taking my hand and walking me to the couch. And I, in that moment, thought I'm going to remember every second of this because I know what's coming is going to change our world. And sitting on that couch and the doctor telling us what had happened, I was in such denial because we had gone through every test. We had just faith that this was going to be an in and out kind of like experience, get on the road. And it was cancer. And just utterly grieved, broke down completely. And just remember like the hugs from strangers. Like it was that moment probably sticks out. Obviously being there with him, but just the embrace of strangers who are comforting you in a moment that you're like never expected to ever encounter.
Yeah. And Jessica, you had a different experience because you guys were already in the hospital. So it's this continuation of medical care and information, but you were not in the hospital. You were just going into different doctor's appointments. And so I want to take you back because I remember too, you had appointments that they said, hey, this could be cancer, but then you have a couple really clear moments. So tell us like what that was like to hear it layered with time in between where you're working and you're going about your life and you're waiting for the doctor to call. Cause that's very relatable, I think, to people.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm still in denial that I have cancer, but I had no other symptoms. So I felt completely fine. I felt healthy, where I think their daughter, it was like an answer to a long journey of illness where you feel fine. And then you're like, what are you saying? So I had gone to an ultrasound, and that was when I first had an inkling that it might be bad. The response came back 𝘼𝙍𝙍, which means a 90% chance of cancer. So that, I remember having the report and Googling it and being like, that's interesting, but still in denial.
Yeah.
And then met with the doctor, and she's telling me words like double mastectomy and radiation. And I'm like, I do not have cancer. Like whatever they're saying, this is not real. And then Kelly took me to that was my first biopsy.
Yep.
Yeah. She remembers more than I do too.
It's true.
She's also my roommate. Like, let's just say it.
We'll say it. We're roommates.
Let's just say.
She's my caretaker. So at that appointment, the way I was treated, which was good, the nurses were taking good care of me, but I just knew from the way they were looking at me that day, I was like, I know that this is cancer. And I wept in the waiting room and waited. Again, this was all in COVID. So all of it has been by myself. So Kelly had to pick me up. So I lost it, and I just knew. So by the time I had gotten the call, because it was so many appointments, I wasn't surprised that it was cancer. The shocking part for me was the stage 4 diagnosis. Because that day I had gone in for a fertility appointment because they wanted to preserve my eggs. So at that point I had accepted it. I was ready to be bald, and I was mad about it, but I was like, we're going to get through it. And everybody tells you you're young and it's just going to be a chapter in your life that you'll look back. And so I was going in thinking we were talking about my eggs, and they told me I couldn't have kids and that I was stage 4 in the same meeting. So I just was not mentally prepared for that conversation.
Yeah.
And then had to drive home to Kelly and Allysar. And
so you guys are all part of the same small group. You've done life together. You've shared like the great moments and obviously the difficult moments. So Jessica, I want to put us in the room for when you hear your good friend say, our daughter has cancer. Like, how did that strike you? Kelly, how did it strike you as a group, and what did you do in response?
Yeah, I was shocked. I remember her texting, like, I'm on the road and they just told me to come back. So I'm turning around. And it's just not the news that you expect to hear at all, especially when they're just saying it's going to be GI issues. And then you're just thinking like, what are we about to walk through? How are we able to support them? So I feel like, we're just equally shocked with you, you know?
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's also crazy to think back, we're all in our 30s now, but at the time we were in our 20s, and you just never expect to hear anything like that for friends or for yourself at that age, but it happens. And so there is a little bit of like, how can we possibly help them?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I can hardly help myself.
You feel like a kid.
You do. You revert back to like, I think I need to call my mom so that she can help them. But I remember because we had already, the beauty of our community is that we already walk together, so we already were helping with the kids. And So when that diagnosis came, there was a promise that you just made in your heart, like, no matter where this goes, we're going to go with them. So the hospital became our home with them. We went after work and we would watch the kids and, we adjusted our lives to serve them.
So Drew, Allysar, for you, as strangers start to comfort you and now as your group, like what are some of those best moments? Because for people who are listening, like I don't have cancer, but I have a friend who just got a diagnosis. Like what do I practically do or say to help them in the grieving process and just walking with them?
I think the best thing is someone that's just willing to sit with you, and maybe they don't even have to say anything. I think someone that's a really good listener. I think what we really valued, because we lived out of the hospital for, it felt like a long time, like for a while.
Yeah, almost 6 months.
Is we really appreciate when people are, hey, what can I do for you? Because that is beyond kind and generous.
Yeah.
What we really just appreciate even more if people just did stuff, in the sense of like, because we don't know, right? Like we're on such survival mode. I honestly have no idea how you can help me, and not that I don't receive it in the sense of like, I'm just trying to make sure my daughter is okay. You know what I mean? Today and everything's going through. So even if it was just a text, or they sent us food, it could just be an encouraging word, whatever it is, they didn't just wait, they just did it. That's some of the best things that I think that happened to us, just people going and doing it.
Yeah, I would say a few things stick out. People who are consistent. I think that when you're sitting in a hospital room for days after days after days alone, with friends coming to visit here and there, just that consistency. There's certain people that stick out in my mind who weren't even like close to me at the time, but would just send like, hey, I'm thinking about you, I'm praying for you. They didn't need to have like polished or eloquent words, just a reminder that you're seen and known. So I would just encourage anyone, just send the text, don't overthink it. Make the call, leave a voicemail, whatever. People who brought us like home cooked like meals when you're just not into the hospital vibes anymore. I remember a friend just brought like bento boxes of like sandwich meat and cheeses and crackers and just like fresh foods to have was like such a gift. There's so many other things I know I'm
there's a lot of stories.
right now.
There's a lot of
But
stories.
that's a couple of things that stick out. Oh, one of my favorite things was somebody brought like bedding for the hospital, like a comforting blanket because it's so cold and you get those like starchy sheets and stuff, and that was really sweet. So
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, you brought up this issue that I'm curious about. You said, I'm still in denial I have cancer. So, they talk about these like stages of grief where you're acknowledging, like it's the shock of hearing you have cancer. It's the denial, it's the wrestling, it's the anger. And then you sort of get to resolution at some point. And that doesn't always go in like a particular order. So this is all over the place. So how is that for you initially? And how is it now as you guys process your journeys?
Yeah, for me initially, it's crazy when something impacts you like that. Like everyone's with you in it, and then you keep going, and then it kind of, the impact fizzles a little bit, and then you're just trying to get kind of back to normal. So I don't know. My journey has been interesting because all of my scans, 6 months in after my treatment, were clear. So then this is a whole other like conversation with God. Like, am I miraculously healed? It's what we've been asking for.
Right.
So, then you feel pretty good. And it's like, well, last week I just had 2 surgeries because cancer was found again, Right. So it just brings you back to that place. And it's a sober balance of, is this my reality that I need to keep in mind while I'm trusting God? Do you know what I mean? It's a weird kind of in between. So I think for the most part, I have purpose to not let it become my identity of being like the girl with cancer, and to keep finding purpose and things that are going to move me forward and give me a future to look to, and not just live like I'm going to die. But then there's reminders that something's going on in your body. And then there's reminders that God has you.
Right.
So
what are those things in your life that still drive you forward where you're like, I'm not just going to sit here and wait to die. I've got a life to live that God's given me. Like, what are some things you've actively pursued to go, I've got some things I want to learn and grow and experience?
yeah. So one of my dreams was always to finish getting my bachelor's degree. So when I was diagnosed, I was, I don't know, a few semesters away. Yeah, I was in school. So I ended up having to drop out. And this was all during COVID. So there's blessing and not blessing in that too, with my job and career that I had been at for a long time. And then I remember talking to my counselor about, things had settled. I was feeling good and thinking, should I go back to school? And I was kind of wrestling, like, maybe I should travel and live it up and do all the things, And she was like, you can do whichever you want. But if you go to school, you're planning your future. Right. Like you have something. Yeah. So I went back to school. I ended up quitting my job and starting a new position so I could start grad school for mental health counseling. And it just feels good to have something that's years down the road that I'm working towards and planning for to finish.
So good.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a conversation we had with a young man I knew who was diagnosed with HIV and then AIDS. And this is like in the late 90s. And everyone was like, oh, that poor guy, he's not going to have much longer. And, he's still alive today by the grace of God. And all those people, so many people who felt sorry for him died before he did, which there's this like strange irony where you're looking at like, how long does that person have? But you don't actually ask the question, how long do I have?
Yeah.
And so when you live life, like every day is a gift.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of that. There's this song in the Psalms. It's Psalm 30 that weeping lasts for the night, but joy comes in the morning. It's like that fierce belief that even in dark moments, light always will follow. Yeah. That you just keep every day living in that. So I love that. What your counselor said to you. That's such a good word.
Yeah, and it like what you just said. It makes me think. I remember reading The Valley of Vision, and it talked about in the deepest wells, the brighter the lights. Like the more in the depths and the dark you are able to see the brightness of the world and your community and God and what that offers. There is just a new appreciation that I wouldn't trade the experience for what you get to learn.
That's good. And for your journey with your daughter, that was a year and a half, like the whole journey. Like how long was that? And how did you experience all those shock, anger, denial, wrestling? like is she healed? Are there other things? And how do you do that with an open hand?
Ada was, after her diagnosis, she went through about 4 rounds of treatment, which is about 3 months. She had a really unique case where only 1% had this, this hormone that was the cancer was disrupting everything else in her body. So she was hospitalized. A lot of times in cancer treatment, you get your treatment, you're sick, but you go home and recover. Well, Ada was never able to leave. She needed around the clock care. So she went through chemo, and we were so filled with faith that this was going to take care of everything. And she went through this and got that scan right after the 4 rounds, and the tumor didn't move at all. There was no shrinking. It didn't respond, and it felt like you were just crushed.
Yeah.
And then after that, we went through what had become at the beginning, there's no way we can operate on this thing. It's so massive. It's wrapped around kidneys and all these other issues. It would be so difficult to operate on, became the only option.
Right.
And so I don't know if you want to kind of talk about what happened from there.
Yeah. And then once we knew that the chemo didn't work or really do anything for it, then it was okay, we got to go find some surgeons, who's going to take this case. So we were even worried about who's even going to be able to do this.
Your daughter.
Because it's wrapped around the kidney. It's in the spinal cavity. Her tumor was. It looked huge, on the x-rays. And I just remember through prayer. And I just feel through all this, I don't know if, I just felt like it was thing after thing. It was hard even to catch up or process. So I don't know if there was even grieving At least for me, there was no grieving in this moment. This is like holding
Straight
on to
adrenaline.
your seat. Yeah. Hopeful, holding on to your seat for sure. But then, I mean, the Lord opened doors. We got to interview with, I know a lot of people probably know or have heard of St. Jude's. We did Children's Hospital Philadelphia. We went up and visited. So we went to New York.
Sloan Kettering.
To Sloan Kettering.
Yeah.
And all these people are like the top people for this surgery. So, yeah, I mean, through that, she had her surgery. It was actually on Allysar's birthday. And we had some friends that came out, and they flew out just to hang out with us. And it was kind of weird because, like, shouldn't we be in the waiting room? Like, I'm not gonna lie, we were like H&M. We were like, I was being honest, like during the surgery, it was crazy. Like we were just went shopping, and they just were really good friends, so we didn't lose our minds during the surgery. So if you're asking about grieving, how did we handle the process? Honestly, I don't think my mind even caught up to like a year after. And I think we realized we were like, I remember at the beginning, the floor, like department manager or something at the hospital, she took us aside and like, even she said, hey, like marriages usually don't like make it after this kind of stuff. And I was like, what? Like, why are you telling us this stuff right now? You know what I mean? So I think she was just making sure we were going to be okay. So all these thoughts, but after, the surgery, it's like, hey, it was successful. I think after it had to be in the next year, we kind of felt beat up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think through that's where we were like, okay, like, let's go to therapy. You know what I mean? Let's start talking with people.
Yeah.
And that's where I felt like maybe a little bit of the grieving and processing actually truly started happening. Sorry, it's such a long story, but like that's like the honest timeline of
you're
how
just
it went.
surviving.
Yeah.
I do remember for me, I'm a writer, so that helped me process a lot through that on my own. But I remember every like 3 to 4 weeks while we were in this journey, I would just take a weekend, like he would be on in the hospital, and I would be like under the covers, just like hiding, just so physically, I don't know, responding to everything that had been happening. I couldn't get out of bed. And so it was like I almost knew clockwork every month there was going to be a weekend where I was just like down, and then you kind of get enough energy back up and strength and encouragement and kind of go back out there. But to his point, I called the aftermath. The aftermath was way harder than the beginning, because now you're trying to like reorient with life and like do like working and raising your kids at home and experiencing triggers that you didn't expect. I remember being in a room when somebody else, not Jessica, was given a cancer diagnosis, and my body started physically reacting, and I started weeping, and I was like, what is going on right now? But it was triggering. So just kind of learning to like cope and find ourselves back in therapy, and like trying to figure out how do we do life again, like as like married couple, and talk to each other. And
I'm like,
it was nuts.
Yeah, this is like my worst nightmare, like being on this, talking about your feelings, and like I'm just being totally honest, because it's like,
that's why Allysar said all the time.
Like this is exactly like what I just love therapy and he's like, man, you just really try your hardest not to feel anything through life. I'm like, yeah, that's my literally like, I'm trying to do that all the time.
There's another way.
And extremely unhealthy. It's like unhealthy, obviously too. But I think through that, and even on the after, you're just trying to not remember it, but you need to, what I mean? So these conversations, like, I am emotional, like it is probably healthy. And I think even over how many years ago, like 3 years.
Yeah, she's better, guys. I didn't say that. After
we didn't
surgery,
say that.
she was healed.
Yeah.
And she's been healthy, and her scans have been clear for the last 3 years.
Yeah, she's in school, and she's so healthy. I think I'm still grieving some parts of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely.
I was going to say, like, there is a reality that although, you're out of that situation, and Jessica, you've seen like bright days in your journey, there is loss that you will never get back through your experience. Like, you had a 1-year-old turn 2 in a hospital. We had Chick-fil-A for her birthday in the hospital. And you missed moments with Kaiden, your son. And I think
about that a lot.
Yeah. And Jessica, like you were told you will never have children. Like there are losses of expectations and hopes and dreams. So in that way, like how do you accept it and move forward with your life? Because cancer does that to people every day. Cancer takes away hopes and dreams and realities and plans in a moment. So how do you look back on that now and tell yourself years later, months later, whatever, like, what would you say to yourself?
Yeah. That's a great question.
I mean, I feel similar to Drew in processing emotion. It's probably one of my just harder things is reflecting and remembering. I just don't. But I also, when I don't, I miss out on all that has happened. So sometimes I just purpose, if you feel it, like you feel scared, you have to remember all that has occurred, and it gives you the ability to keep going and to move forward. But for me, it is hard to just sit in the silence and reflect. Like, whoa, that was a lot, and look what has happened. So.
I remember there was a moment for me in the hospital where I was really mad at God, and people kept telling me like, oh, he's going to get so much glory, or he's going to get, through this. And I was like, well, I don't want him to. Like, I just don't want to be going through this, period. Right. And I remember thinking how like I was missing this and this and this, and just being so angry about it. And saying like, I know you're good, but, fill in the blank over and over and over again. And suddenly, I don't know, it was just a moment where I started to realize like all of the answered prayers at the same time next to all of the things that I was mad about. And suddenly my gratitude had become longer than what I was, my grief. And I was able to then move from seeing only the bad things into like looking and being grateful for what was ahead. And now looking back, we're 3 years removed, there's been incredible celebration. We just did her Make-A-Wish in December, like literally a few months ago. And it felt, I don't even know how to explain it, but better than we could have dreamed of. And to know we were there celebrating her healing just it was so special.
I had an over-under on Allysar going first.
It's all right.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about, the comeback where, you look at like there's no way they're going to make it back. And when you do, it's not just the take for granted I made it. No one thought you were going to make it. You didn't think you were going to make it. And you did.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a reality that like, even through all this grief, tears everywhere, there's been so much growth.
Yeah.
Like God didn't just bring a promise fulfilled. He made you better. He made you greater people. He made you more loving friends. He brought people around you, all of us. We've learned so much through these journeys. And I think of even the way that God, in his mysterious ways, we would never plan things the way that he does, but it's because we can't do it like him. To have Drew and Allysar walk ahead through a cancer journey with Ada and have us be close, we learned things about cancer, and it made cancer, I'm not the one with it. So this comes with a little bit of like, I'm not, it's not my story, but truly I remember us saying like, it's a little more palatable because we've seen behind the curtain. You experience the nurses that love what they do and care for you day in and day out. You see that there is a life after chemo. You see the way community comes around you. Like we got to witness that before Jessica got a stage 4 diagnosis. If it was the other way around, I can't imagine how scared they would have been. You think about that. So the way that God has grown each of you, myself, like through grief, there is just beauty. So I don't know if anything sticks out of like to remember who you were before and now. Is there a certain promise or a certain thing in you that you feel like, man, without this experience, I wouldn't be this way?
Talking about my therapist a lot, but I know I like empathy is something I've always. I don't really have it. You know, he even said it's like, wow, you don't have really any empathy. I was like, yeah, that's pretty interesting, right? But I think going through something like this, empathy grows.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you think about, you know, everyone's situation, Buki, and I remember
I'm
people.
Buki.
Yeah.
Oh, Jessica.
That's her nickname.
So that's her nickname. But even people on our floor, you know, you definitely have a special heart or a place in your heart for people like that. You want to be there for them, like living out the example. You want to be a listening ear, quick to be like, hey, what do we send them?
Yeah.
You never drive by the hospital again and just go, there's a hospital there. You think about who's there, and what they're going through.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Drew has always been more naturally like generous than me. He's just like kind of quick to give things away or buy something or think of someone and send it. So I feel like through walking that journey and receiving such massive amounts of generosity, and I'm not talking just monetary, but just showing up or being there in encouragement. It's a joy to give it away now. Whereas like before, it was a hesitancy or didn't feel natural. Now it's like, how do we just be there? So I would say that's one of the biggest things that I have grown in. That wasn't like a natural bend like him.
Yeah.
I just want to give away the generosity from a place having known what it was like to receive it.
I know something too. I eat at McDonald's a lot. I love McDonald's. Are we allowed to promote that on here?
Sponsor.
I always round up for Ronald McDonald House.
That's good.
So just a shout out. I mean, it's like 16 cents. Just
It is
it's
real
crazy.
and it is an awesome place.
Yeah, we met people that were there for years.
Wow.
Like they had kids there and stuff.
That's crazy.
Like it's literally their home. So I mean, that's kind of a silly thing, but
No, that's a real thing.
yeah, round it up, round it up. Can't wait for my
I
Big
love
Mac.
I feel just more brave through it, honestly. Like I remember talking to you right after about some soldier that was entering war, maybe, I don't know, but
One of my stories, one of my rambling
it's going to
stories.
come back to you because I heard it recently and I was like, heard it. But the guy somebody was saying like, how are you going to enter, the field? And he's like, they have nothing on me. They've already killed me. Like I'm already dead. So, I mean, not to sound morbid, but it just like something about it is like, we've done bigger things.
Right.
Like, come on, setting this up today, stressful. We've done bigger things. So, and I remember too, the day that, you hear the word cancer, I remember I was so annoyed because somebody had set up chairs in a room and they were blaming it on other people and all these departments were like in on. And I was just so mad and annoyed and like had all this justice inside. And then it's like, you have cancer? Like, what are we even talking about here?
Who cares about who set up
What are
the
we
chairs?
doing? And I think too, for watching what it did in our community, like we all go way back. Like Drew and I have known each other 18 years now.
18 years.
So like already, living that amount of life. But then when like we are at like each other's bedside in the hospital and like Kelly's taking care of me, like Kelly last week, the surgeon comes out of my operation and tells Kelly like everything went well. And she says, tell Kelly I said hi.
Thanks,
Like that
doctor.
is like, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
You can't write that up or do a team building or anything to experience that depth of community and life. So I'll just forever be grateful.
Yeah. And I think it's like, feels weird to say something like this, but I've told her like, she's sheepishly asking me like, can you drive me to my surgery? And I'm like, I've waited for this moment.
She said, this is my dream come true.
Like, as a friend walking with somebody going through something hard, all you want to do is offer help. And in so many of these moments, you don't know what helpfulness looks like.
Yeah.
But when there's a moment that is clear and tangible, you're like, check, I'll be there. I'll, leave a country to fly to you and do whatever. So there is something holy about this whole
for sure.
experience that there is just no other way to experience what you experience with the Lord except through walking through situations and journeys like this. And it is that weird thing to say, like, would you change it if you know, like, would you go back and do it different or whatever? But would it produce the same outcome? I don't know that there'd be any other way. So it's just, it's special.
You know, I want to go back to like some of the reframing moments where you're like thinking something that gets reframed because, you know, I know you guys, you've made Jesus the center and the core of your life. And so, you know, was there a moment where you're trying to reframe and you can't, and a worship song comes on, or you read something in the Bible, or you go back to your journal, or someone prays for you and it connects? Do you remember a moment like that where just that relationship with God got very personal, very intimate?
Are you guys going to talk? Yeah, I know. One that does stick out in my mind is I remember feeling all this pressure, like, oh my gosh, well, if you pray this amount and if you go to this service and if you ask for this and be this obedient, then like your healing might come. And I remember reading about God promising Sarah a child, and she like laughs about it because how ridiculous, she's so old. And then he even confronts her on it and she lies. And still his promise was fulfilled. And I remember it was a simple thing that I've probably read several times or heard, you know, sermons on. And I'm like, it is not about her. Like my response to it, I can choose obedience and all of those things, but he is going to do what he's going to do. And if I laugh and if he asks me and I lie, it's still going to come to be. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I just felt like this release of like, I don't have to do all the things to bring the healing or anything like that. That was one that sticks out for me.
Yeah. I heard someone say one time, the only prerequisite to experience a healing or miracle of God is you have to have a problem.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So if you have a problem, you're a candidate for a miracle.
That's so good.
And it's great that that's the sole prerequisite of any miracle in the Bible.
Yep.
You don't have to always generate an amount of faith or obedience to get God to do that.
No.
It's good.
So thankful for that.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
Man, as discouraging, traumatic as the situation was, I think when you look back and you're thinking about this season, it's like, even though how big and how terrifying it was, like the goodness of God overshadowed that greatly. So when you look back and you're thinking about it, it makes me smile, because when I look back at this moment, there's a lot of hurtful things, but I've never had so many people support us, come around us, friends be there for us, God bless us. Like, I just look at that season as a time of like blessing and generosity from him, and kindness and goodness.
That's good.
Like, that's what it's marked by. It's not marked by �々scars on our side. It's not marked by the anxiety level and the unknowing of what's going to happen. It really is marked. And I don't say that without, like just flippantly. It's while we've seen the goodness of God here. And I think even moving forward, like, I think it's very natural to question God in some certain seasons. Like, are you real? Are you there? Are you close? And I think for me and for Allysar, it's when we have those moments, there's now a marker in our life where we can look back and it's like, man, you're clearly present with us. You're clearly moving with us, and you know the road ahead.
That's good.
I remember you saying, like, and you said it probably a lot more beautiful times, but like we gained so much more than we lost. Yeah. And I think that just summarizes it beautifully. And those reframing moments came through being okay with not being okay with the Lord, really. Because if you aren't letting him know how mad you are or sad you are, or anxious you are, overwhelmed you are, like, he can't do what he does, which is show up and bring people around you and give you a comforting word or encouragement and just an unexplainable peace in moments of long waiting. So just, I guess my encouragement is like, it's okay to not be okay, which we say, but it's like, really, like, it's okay, and he can take it and he can show up, and he also grieved. And I think the humanity of Jesus is also just a profound revelation in that season. It's like he walked through loss, he walked through suffering, he walked through pain, he gets it. And so I just look back on that season thinking about how close his humanness became to me, and relatable and present, and like kind of like what you said, like we've done harder things. Like now there's just like such an unwavering faith in like whatever comes, we've got this. And I remember always praying like, okay, like do what only you can do here, because like that's it. That's just where we kind of rest. And the promise of his nearness is just something that I'll never lose. Because I felt that nearness in the darkest moments of our life, and we watched other families lose their children in hallways next to us. And he was always there.
Yeah, one of the things that just reminds me of the way that God joins us in those moments, because a lot of people ask, like, where is God in those moments? And, you know, the prophet Isaiah would say, like, in our distress, he too was distressed. And the angel of his presence came to them. And it's like, God weeps with us, and God comes for us. And, even to suffer for us. I mean, like one of the most, you talk about the humanity of Jesus, one of the most human statements he makes is when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, he says to his disciples, like, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. And I mean, that's a pretty specific identifying of your feelings. Like, I'm so overwhelmed with sorrow, it feels like death. And he let his disciples in on that. And he let all of us in on that for a reason. So, because he does understand and he does walk with us. So I want to actually bring it up for a second. And talk about, like, was there like a funny moment in this whole thing that's like the moment that was just like, you're so tired, so exhausted, so whatever. But
I have to tell a story.
Okay. There's got to be a few of those moments.
Yes.
So many.
So after you've spent time at the hospital, things you know that things are going to happen no matter if you want them to or not. And so there was a time when, Ada was receiving treatment. So she would be hooked up to an IV and she would be in her bed and, and So somebody had to be there with her, and typically it was Drew and Allysar, but there would be times when we wanted to give them rest or whatever, and so Jessica or I would come down, and there was one day in particular where everything just worked out to be that we were all separated, and I think Drew and Allysar were both at the hospital, but Allysar was she was experiencing excruciating pain in her own body. So much so that she needed to go to the emergency room downstairs at her daughter's hospital.
Oh, wow.
So they had called my phone. I didn't answer. I think Jessica answered, was on her way down to help with Ada so that Drew could get Allysar to the hospital. I wake up. I think I was taking a nap. Naps are great. I wake up from my nap. Sleeping on the job. I know. Man, I missed it. No, I wake up. I get down there. You're trying to understand what's going on. Allysar is in the emergency room waiting to be seen while Ada is upstairs in the children's wing getting an IV. So Jessica and I are upstairs.
She just started chemo.
Starting chemo. So there's just this chaotic moment, and there's a fear of like, what's going on with Allysar now? And will Ada be okay that her parents aren't here and that we're stepping in? But what ensued was really just like a special night where the three of us girls ended up being together in the emergency room while Drew went back up to be with Ada, and we laughed a lot. We were delusionally
I was on morphine in so much pain.
Yeah, and I think at one point we were all so tired because it had taken so long to get you
3 in the morning
that you guys were laying both in a hospital bed together. I'm on a chair, but you just look at like, wow. Again, you've been through harder things, so here we are, and we're together at least.
Party in the ER.
In the ER.
Let's go.
It's something that, it's like one of my most favorite memories from that time because we were together and you were okay. You had diverticulitis, but
stressed.
You were
You just
okay.
violated a HIPAA law. You
Oh,
can't do that.
sorry. That's your story to tell.
Yeah. Don't watch the popcorn if you have that, by the way.
Yeah, watch the
Yeah, the
popcorn.
kernels.
Love popcorn.
Yeah. So, like, what are some of the things people have said to you that now you maybe can laugh about, but in the moment it's like, don't say those things to people.
Oh I think I would complain to you guys all the time. Stay strong. It just got under my skin. I couldn't handle it. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
I know everyone means well when they say
Yeah,
that.
of course.
But I just was like, I am not strong right now. And that is not encouraging.
Yeah.
But that's a silly one. Did you have one?
Yeah, I'm gonna generalize this. Just
Yeah, please do.
Because it was Kelly?
no, like it's basically you have people looking up 1MD things to like help you. And I'm
Oh,
Oh,
like,
yeah, that's a bad idea.
Don't do it,
All
you
your
guys.
friends who
Like
aren't
I-
doctors telling
yeah,
you.
and I know it's
Yeah.
from a good place, but like honestly, that's
Yeah.
pretty,
Yep.
pretty
The alkaline
unhelpful.
diet, they tell me.
There's a lot of things that.
Dieting advice?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know people meant well, but that was interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
Yeah.
it's the opposite of what this doctor told
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And-
oh,
go ahead.
sorry. I
Yeah.
think it's like from a lot of the Christian cliches that people mean well, but it's similar to stay strong. Like, I know if the Lord works through this, that it's worth it, or, you know, he's still good. It's like, yeah, I know, but like, I didn't find that helpful all the time. Sometimes you just have to put your phone away too. It's like, all right. Yeah.
Put your phone away. That's good advice for everyone.
That is
Yeah.
good advice.
I did really have to protect myself because it was COVID. And I remember, you know, things were opening up and I would come back for a staff meeting and it's like, I haven't seen anyone in a couple months and now I'm going to face you all after getting diagnosed and there's 400 people in a room. And I just, some days I was like, I don't have it in me right now. That's not anybody's fault. It's just like, Lord, can I do that for myself? Yes. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that was good. I think even now, it's like, hey, if someone's going through something, even if they're sick, you know what I mean? Like they just have like a cold. Or people are they're going somewhere with their families in the hospital. If we send a text, it's like, don't worry if they don't text you back.
Yeah.
Because you don't take it personally either.
Yeah.
Because I think that was like nice for us of like, hey, we'll just get to it when we get to it because we're
Yeah, the
extremely
pressure's
grateful.
off.
But it's so sweet how everyone texts you. But
Yeah.
sometimes you're
yeah.
in the thick of it. So it's kind of nice having that
The freedom.
mentality,
Yeah.
the freedom of that
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gotten to some lighter questions after we've gotten through some of the grief and everything. So I actually want to take us into a little rapid fire moment, a little fun
rapid fire.
to reflect back. So tell us, maybe one or two of you, you don't have to all answer, what is a favorite meal that somebody brought in the midst of, hospital or recovery? Favorite meal, whether homemade or delivered, what is it?
Somebody gave us like charcuterie boxes that we could just store in the fridge. And I was like, this is genius. And so every time somebody is in the hospital now, I love to make those because you just want to like eat fresh fruits and
Yeah.
vegetables and meats and cheeses and nuts.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I mean, an Uber Eats gift card that's it for me.
That is awesome.
It's amazing.
Helpful. Yeah.
Just send the card.
Yeah.
Don't say what do you need. Just send the card.
Yeah.
That's what I think. The gift card. The gift card.
Yeah. The gift card.
And
Yeah.
what's your address again?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
Literally Chipotle, 8 to 8 Chipotle every day.
Yes.
All she would eat.
Every day had to be at least 3 months. Every day.
And
Yeah,
before
and
that,
spicy
it was
Doritos.
Before that, it was
Lays.
only
Baked Lays.
baked Lays in the
Baked Lays.
hospital. That's all
And
she
the
ate.
white
definitely
cheddar
had a weird
popcorn.
diet then.
Yeah.
Definitely has explored a lot more foods. Like she loves kimchi
We're
now,
thankful.
so we're okay. Like that didn't ruin her in the future.
Okay, next question. A comfort show or movie that you watched. Maybe it's something that you always went back to, or something that just like helped you not think about things for a little while.
I watched Frozen probably 50 times. So I don't know if that's comforting or not. Kung Fu Panda. Yeah. Let's say
Oh
that
my
was
gosh,
comforting.
yeah.
I love a good Kung Fu Panda.
There were
movie.
a lot of kids shows and things going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jessica.
Everything. I mean, Tiger King came out during that time. Gilmore Girls, Great British Baking Show.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those are solid.
It was COVID and cancer, so there was a lot of time to watch things.
Yep.
So one question as we wrap up. So we know that there are people who are going to get diagnosed with cancer today. and tomorrow, next week, and people who are going to experience, a relapse or as occurrence of cancer. Sometimes, this doesn't always end with a period. It ends with like a ... So what do you say to a person who's either experiencing this for the first time or someone who's experiencing like, hey, it's back? What would you say to them as far as the wisdom you've gotten on the journey?
A couple things. First of all, I started researching and watching people's journeys on YouTube, and I just was diving in for information. It was not helpful to me. I attached my story to theirs, good or bad. And I just like can picture what happened to them. And everyone's journey is so different that for me, I literally gave Kelly medication and I was like, read the side effects and tell me if I need to go to the hospital. Like, I don't want to know. I don't want to be predicting that for my future.
Right.
And that's just like how I process and what I needed and what I had to kind of go through to realize. I think too, there is always someone that is one step ahead of you, that it is their honor to walk you through it. Sorry. And like, I remember talking to, this girl that had gotten diagnosed stage 4. And it was like, I just knew in that moment, like, this will be you eventually, talking to someone else that's going through it. And like, she's just able to talk to you, like, because she's been through it all, you know? And so it is like you have that moment where someone, hooks you up with someone that's in the beginning of their journey. And you're just like, wow, like, I remember feeling like, when will I ever be one step ahead and be able to bring someone along? And then you are. And it's like, you get to tell someone that, like, I'm not putting this pressure on you that you're going to be walking others through it, but you are. You're going to get to another side of it where you're going to be able to stand and talk about your experience. And that's so powerful. So I'm just thankful for friends I have that I would never have. But because of the word cancer, we're bonded for life, and they've walked me through.
Wow. That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. Drew, Allysar?
I think heard someone say, like, man, I think it's great to have compassion for others, obviously, but sometimes in these situations, you need to have a little compassion for yourself.
Yes.
Because you can put a lot of pressure on things.
Yeah.
And that could be totally natural, that you want to just try to keep everything as normal as possible, even though that might be not very possible during your time. So just to know that things are going to be a little bit messy, maybe with scheduling or, just how your normal life is. And that could really make you feel like you're failing at life or you're really behind at life. And that's just not really fair to yourself to let yourself think that. So as simple as it sounds, it is nice to be able to say, like, hey, this is okay. I can have I literally had to say it out loud. I can have compassion for myself. And take the load off and take the pressure that I'm putting on myself for the day.
Yeah. That's good.
That's really good. I was going to say something along those lines. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to just sit in whatever you're feeling, good or bad. I tend to want to just like carry things really well and achieve something. And like, you can't achieve as you're walking through grief. You just have to deal with the grief, and the grief looks different at different times. And even that's okay. So like, taking the pressure off, like, I need to process this a certain way, or I'm not feeling what I should be feeling, or I'm not responding, or when I'm angry and feeling irrational or upset with yourself for even being angry, like, it's just part of the process and it's okay. I remember my therapist saying to me, giving me the visual of like, sometimes the grief's gonna feel ankle deep and sometimes it's gonna feel like you got knocked down. And that was really helpful for me, like, kind of daily to assess, like, how am I feeling today? Does it feel ankle deep? Okay, it's gonna be okay today. And then, do I feel like knocked down? I need to go retreat or ask for what I need. That's probably the other advice, is just be honest about what you need and not ashamed. I think about the picture of when we talk about like washing people's feet, Jesus in the Bible, like, when he washed his disciples' feet, I think about the way that they received that and the gift that he gave them through that experience. And sometimes you receive humility from letting your feet be washed by others. And that was just something that I had to learn to be okay with. So I need my laundry done, or I need my oil changed, or I need you to take my other kid to the doctor because he's sick. And just receiving it, because there's blessing for you, but also for others, and giving it. So
That's good.
that's it.
Good. Well, thank you guys for joining us today and sharing your story. It's been a privilege. I know your words are going to be so helpful for those walking through the journey.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us for our conversation today. Again, we're in this series and season about grief. And as you heard today, the grief in the cancer journey is very real. It's very deep, but there is hope, even in the midst of some of the darkest times in these stories and in other stories. So personally, one of the takeaways that I had was hearing Drew, I think Allysar shared about Drew, but the reality that as they looked at all that they had lost, they stacked it up against all that they had gained, and there was more that they had gained. And I think that that's a reality that we can all have when we just position ourselves in gratitude. And so it's a challenge even for me in my life of just when I feel marked by loss, am I taking the time to actually see, but what else is left, and there will still be more. So that was a great takeaway for me. What about you?
Yeah, that was a good one. I think my favorite part was when Jessica talked about, being that woman a step ahead with stage 4 cancer, and the woman who met with her and gave her hope. And it just reminds me of that scripture where Paul says, suffering flows into our life, but God's comfort also flows into our life. And when we receive that comfort, we can pass it on to someone else. And that's actually something Jessica was excited about. It's not just, I went through all of this and maybe I can find someone. It's like, no, I went through this for something. And I can't wait to find who I can help and pass this on to. And that was exciting for me to see that like sparkle in her eye. Because it should make all of us curious, whether we have cancer or not, what have I gone through in my life? And how might God give it meaning as I share that with others?
There's a purpose in it all. It's really encouraging. And I want to share with you that if you have any questions about today's episode or want more information, you can check out the show notes. Be sure to check out the other episodes in our grief series. We have another episode coming up where we'll share a little bit about families raising kids with special needs. So be sure to check that out. And also, before we go, I do want to mention something that wasn't mentioned specifically in the episode was just the aftermath. And if you are somebody who's walking the aftermath of a grief journey like cancer, you heard it here. A lot of it comes through processing with someone. So Doug, can you talk about what's available for people wherever they are, counseling? What should people be looking to do in the aftermath?
Yeah, I think it's, I've heard many times from really good counselors that depression is this accumulation of ungrieved losses. And so people being able to take stock and go, what are the resources, in my faith community, at my local church, with the counseling services that are offered around me. There's so many amazing support groups. It's just the courage to show up to one. And there are people around you that will know, hey, this is a great group. This is a great, people in that space of mental health and redemption work where it's like, I really want to dig deep in that area. So I think reach out to your faith community, your church, and those local resources is going to be so important.
Yeah, so our hope for you is if you are somebody going through that you would take that step to find someone to be part of that journey with you. And if you're not walking through this, you could be that somebody for somebody else. So make sure you're looking out for people walking through diagnosis, health crisis, cancer. You never know what could happen when you come together to support one another. So thanks again for joining us. We look forward to being with you again soon.
Thanks.
Everything has a purpose, no road without change. Change makes way for loss, the grief makes way for pain. And all throughout the seasons, you're the one who's in control. Despite my current state, I choose to say, Jesus, let me all the way. let you work. You're the kind who's with me in the dirt. As you tend the soil of my fallow heart, the season comes, but you're in every part.